There is one reason why so many of us are feeling not good enough, and no matter how much you achieve or how many people tell you otherwise, you still sometimes just want to disappear, become invisible, because you're feeling so degraded and thin-skinned. But the thing is, that voice inside you that keeps saying you're not good enough, it didn't start with you. In fact, you weren't born with it. It was planted there, and it's been shaping the way you see yourself ever since. And in today's video, we're going to look at where that belief really comes from, what toxic shame has to do with it, how it quietly controls every area of your adult life even without you realizing it, and most importantly, what you can finally do to break free from it. And I will promise you, after today's video, you will have the tools to finally feel okay and better with yourself. Welcome to today's episode. My name is Robert, and if you're new here, I'm not a healthcare professional myself. Instead, I share a client's perspective here on this channel. And let's start today's episode with the painful origins of where the I'm not good enough belief actually comes from. The feeling of I'm not good enough starts in early childhood. Because here's the thing, most of us didn't wake up one day and decided that we are not good enough. In fact, the belief was built slowly and often already during childhood or even before. And maybe when you had needs, when you wanted to set boundaries, or when you showed specific emotions, instead of being met with understanding, you were met with anger, with rejection, or even withdrawal by your parents, by your caregivers, teachers. You might have heard things such as, when you cry, you're too much, or when you got angry, you're bad in a way. And over time, those messages sinked in. You started to believe that expressing yourself, what you truly feel within here, or simply just being yourself in any kind of way, is somehow wrong. Then there's also school and society. When we enter school, when we started to find our way into society, a world where you would constantly be graded, compared, or ranked, then in our performance-driven culture, love and praise often seem tied to what you do and not to who you are. Get good grades? You got celebrated. You struggled or were simply learned differently? Well, suddenly you're less than the other people. And this reinforced again those old messages that you probably got during your first years. Your worth depends on what you produce, on how you perform. And these experiences can also be summarized as emotional neglect and early trauma. And here's the thing. You don't need obvious abuse for this to leave a mark. No, chronic invalidation, being ignored, being overlooked, constantly being rated or dismissed is enough to shape your self-worth. The core message that took root is painfully simple, and it's called "The way I am is not okay." And once this message is installed, it follows you into every part of your adult life today. And when those messages, you're too much, you're not good enough, get repeated over throughout your life, they start to feel like the truth about who you are. And then they even become, unconsciously of course, part of your identity. And this is exactly when they stop being just painful memories and they turn into something much deeper, the thing we call toxic shame. Let's talk about that next. Now, when we describe toxic shame, we are not talking about just a random emotion here that you feel, for example, like grief or like anger. No, toxic shame goes much deeper. It is your belief system that is affected here, your belief system within you. Toxic shame sounds like, I'm wrong, I'm a mistake, I'm unworthy. And it's not just about something that you did being wrong. It's about you believing that you are wrong at the core of yourself. Another distinction I like to draw here is that toxic shame is not the same thing as healthy shame. Healthy shame is your inner signal that tells you when, for example, your action have hurt someone, or when you have crossed your own values, when you've crossed a boundary like too much. The difference between those two is that healthy shame says, I did something wrong, while toxic shame says, I am wrong. And that shift makes toxic shame so damaging for us. I also explain toxic shame in this video here. This is how the vicious cycle of toxic shame looks like. It always starts within a social situation or relationship, because this is where shame is felt around. This is where usually we experience the wounds in our past. And this social situation or relationship that usually leads obviously to spontaneous emotions arising within us. For example, when we are in a relationship, we sometimes might feel anxiety, or we might feel upset, so anger, or we might feel sadness. And when we learn that those emotions are usually bad or wrong, and our caregivers, our parents reacted with abandonment or just saying us that we are bad, that we shouldn't feel those kind of things, then you get reminded to that. You remember that you shouldn't feel this, or you shouldn't behave like this, or you shouldn't do this or need this, all those kind of things. And this is where we feel and experience toxic shame around, because we cannot push those emotions away. We cannot just not address the things we are feeling or the things we are needing within us. We cannot just abandon ourselves constantly. And because of that, because it always comes up within relationships, we then develop this sense of toxic shame around it. But we need to do something in order to address the social situation and in order to be socially compatible at work, in our relationships, in our friendships, in any social context. So what do? We have different coping strategies as people with toxic shame. For example, one huge strategy is playing the ideal persona. This is what we learned early on. If we learned as children that we shouldn't express specific emotions or shouldn't behave a specific way. So as we play the ideal persona, we usually have masking or hiding tactics. So insecurities, emotions that we learn we shouldn't feel, we shouldn't express, needs we shouldn't have, we learned to hide those, right? So masking is a strategy in order to overplay those emotions, needs, and boundaries that we were not allowed to express. There are also other compensating strategies, so-called, that are linked to masking and hiding. Things, for example, as grandiosing thoughts or also degrading thoughts. So what we sometimes put to the outside is that we say, oh, we are the best ones, we are the biggest ones. Look at my new car, look at my job, look at my bank account. I'm so grandiose. Or some other people have strategies to put themselves down, right? They say something such as, look how worthless I am. I never can get things done, for example. Those things are obviously distractions we put out there in order to get away from those emotions, needs, and boundaries that we were never allowed to express, but that we are feeling in specific moments in relationships. Another consequence of all of those kind of things are also addictions. Addictions are one of the final states that come up if we repress certain emotions, needs, and boundaries for too long. And addictions can be everything. Work addiction, sex addiction, porn addiction, drug addiction, all those kind of things. And obviously, and maybe you've thought that while presenting the cycle here, this is very exhausting if we constantly try to overplay our emotions, push them away, mask them, use compensating strategies, or fall into addiction. So this is leading to overwhelm, to a constant feeling also of depression, of burnout, of anxiety, all these kind of really painful states. Those are the final result often of unresolved toxic shame from our childhood. And those things necessarily lead to withdrawal and isolation. We experience relationships as extremely exhausting. We feel that there is our need to isolate, that the only possibility to sometimes be in a relationship is to just be on our own sometimes. So we have to withdraw because in relationships we constantly have the feeling that our emotions, and this is what the cycle now starts again are not okay, that we should not feel those kind of things, that we feel ashamed for having these emotions, needs and boundaries. And often it's also pretty much unconscious, so we are not truly aware of this cycle subconsciously going on all the time within our relationships. We're just wondering why life is so hard for us, why relationships seem so difficult for us, and why we somehow fall into addictions, or we somehow are not feeling like ourselves. This is why. But why is it so hard to let go of that spiral of toxic shame? Well, the hardest part about toxic shame is that it doesn't just live in the past. It shapes your present, your here and now, and it influences every aspect of your adult relationships, your career, and even your identity and how you see yourself. So in relationships, for example, shame might make you settle for less than you deserve, or you keep chasing the approval of people who can never truly give it to you. In your career, it can push you to overwork, to overperform, to perfectionize, and you still feel like falling short sometimes. And in your self-image, it can make you question your worth every single day, no matter your achievements. And as we saw, the result here is a painful, self-fulfilling cycle of I always end up with people who confirm again my worst fears. This is what happens during that cycle. So your nervous system gets wired to expect rejection, to expect criticism or abandonment. So unconsciously, it's gravitating towards situations that feel familiar even if they hurt you. And that's what we call trauma bonding. In other words, shame doesn't just hurt your feelings, it dysregulates your entire sense of identity. And until you address it, it keeps you trapped in the same patterns over and over again. Let's see how to address it. This is the million-dollar question here. But first, before we do that, let's take a closer look to exactly where we can break the cycle. And the answer is right here. You have to break the cycle before your toxic shame thoughts start, before you enter that state of a cycle of belief that you shouldn't feel this, that you shouldn't be like that you're wrong. Before that, you have to break the cycle and learn that you're okay if you feel, do, or are XYZ. This is the solution. And how to get there? Well, here are 5 steps from therapy to break the cycle of toxic shame. Step number 1 is to realize that it was never your fault. One thing you should understand in this is that this not good enough feeling, it didn't come from you originally. It was given to you from the outside, from someone else. So you didn't choose it, and you were not also born with it. It is a result of other people's words, of other people's actions and wounds being projected onto you. And it's cycling within your head. Those beliefs that you have in here, they come from other people. And once you see it like that, you can separate your true self from the false story that you have been carrying for so long. Step number 2, how to stop feeling not good enough. Replace self-criticism with compassion. And let me be clear here, this is a repetition game. Every time you catch yourself tearing yourself down, pause and replace it with kindness. Remind yourself, I'm not broken, I was hurt. And this simple shift already starts to rewire the way you speak to yourself from an inner critic to an inner ally. Self-compassion is definitely the first level here. Let me tell you what the second level is after self-compassion. It's self-containment. And self-containment is something that definitely deserves a full video or course. And this is why I came up with a full course in class number 6 here in our premium community. If you want to learn how to practice self-containment, learn how to reparent yourself, to start learning to carry and hold your own emotions, to carry for your own needs and set healthy boundaries, definitely join our premium community. There we have multiple classes for all of these subjects, as well as in class number 6, a full course on how to practice self-containment. If you want to join, just go to understandable.net, and there you can start a free 7-day trial where you can already access the courses. Understandable.net, and then you can join our premium community. Step number 3, train yourself to interrupt the cycle as often as possible. Toxic shame thrives on repetition, as well as healing does. So the same triggers, the same reactions over and over. The way to weaken it is to interrupt it as often as you can. And that could mean choosing connection instead of retreat when you, for example, feel triggered within a social situation, within a relationship, but also staying kind to yourself instead of spiraling into self-blame and abandoning yourself because it feels too much and too overwhelming. This again is practicing self-containment, class number 6 within our community. Every interruption, no matter how small, starts to break that pattern. So practice that. Step number 4, create new relationship experiences. This is also a big one, and it can be pretty difficult for many of us out there, especially if you isolate and avoid other people and relationships because they feel so overwhelming and unsafe. But it's definitely about baby steps here. So creating new relationship experiences over time. That is what cures relational trauma in the end. Also, of course, therapy and supportive communities. You can also use our community. We have a full premium community where you can post things as well, get comfortable and learn to feel safer. And also very important, that is a huge topic, finding the right people for your healing. This is also something that you should learn, because if you always avoid other people because you have that deep belief that other people are somehow a threat to you, then you never can truly heal those wounds. So it's pretty important to find the right people, or even if it's just one person. We have a course for that as well right here. And step number 5 is using re-regulation tools and resources. Re-regulation tools and resources, those are many things that you can do to re-regulate and calm down in dysregulated situations. So when you feel really emotional, when you feel a lot of anger, grief, all those difficult emotions that you usually tend to push away. So you need tools to calm back down and to get grounded again. And during my years of therapy, I gathered tons of those tools together with my therapist, and I put them together into one free workbook that I call Re-Regulation Resources. And especially the writing techniques also from therapy that I put into this workbook are pretty much helping, especially in situations of toxic shame. You can download the full workbook in edition 1.5 actually for free if you just go to understandable.net/book. There we have a full page for the free workbook. You can also access it within our community. We have a full class in the classroom called Regulation Resources. There you can also access the full workbook for free within the 7-day trial. So summarized, behind the belief of not being good enough stands usually a hurt inner child, a wounded child that wasn't allowed to feel their own feelings, to meet their own needs, or to set their own well-needed boundaries because their caregivers, their parents, didn't allow it to do so. But the good news is that there are ways to manage and to work through toxic shame and also the belief of not being good enough if you have the right community, the right resources and tools. And now I'm curious what you think about it. Have you also already recognized the link between the belief of not being good enough and toxic shame? Definitely let me know in the comments below. And if you want to support this channel and podcast, definitely become a member of our premium community. Just go to understandable.net, join us, and I see you next Sunday for a brand new episode here on the channel. Have a great day.